Hello everyone, I just wanted to quickly mention that over these summer months we are excited to share encore episodes. An encore episode is a representation of a past conversation, and these episodes were well received when they were first published, and we hope you'll enjoy them today. We are taking the summer to prepare for season 9 of the podcast, which will begin in September, so throughout these summer months we'd also like to invite your feedback. We've created a listener survey that we would love for you to fill out. You can find the survey link in the show notes for this episode, which are on our website, globalmissionspodcast.com. Now, enjoy today's encore episode.
Welcome to the Global Missions Podcast, a show for Christ followers who want to participate more effectively in God's work, both at home and to the ends of the earth. Visit us at globalmissionspodcast.com to find show notes, resources, and previous episodes. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast is brought to you by the Global Missions Toolbox, a new online collection of practical, trusted resources made for those who support global missions from home. Visit us online at globalmissionstoolbox.com to register for access to this growing collection of tools for senders. And now, here's your host, Rob Magwood, better known to many friends as Mags.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. One of the very regular themes addressed through the Global Missions Toolbox and through this podcast is the ongoing care of mission workers. The vast majority of senders that I have a chance to interact with, pastors, missions committees, or people who simply know and love a missionary, everyone wants to care well for the servants who have been sent. We can have lots of important discussions about strategy and tactics and finances and methods with plenty of controversy and debate. But when we talk about caring for people, we usually have an easy consensus that we all want to do this well. Today, we're going to dive into how local churches can help care for our missionary families. We're going to be joined by an experienced caregiver from Western Canada who's going to share a list of ideas that you can consider for your context. As we visit today, I'm going to encourage you to actually keep a missionary or a missionary family in mind so that you can actually envision how these ideas might apply to a real life situation to someone that you know. Here, friends, is our conversation with Tracy. Our guest today is Tracy Minke, who for the past 9 years has served as the pastor of outreach missions at Crossroads Church in Red Deer, Alberta. She's speaking to us from Western Canada, where it's still sort of summerish, Tracy?
Yeah, the fall is definitely here. The leaves are gorgeous and they're just starting to come down. So we're just trying to hold winter back a bit.
As we record this, it's just at the end of September. And we're looking forward to the change of seasons. Mm-hmm. Tracy is originally from the Seattle, Washington area, and she has a master's in theology and development from the Oxford Center for Mission Studies. She served for a decade in Eastern and Central Africa with World Concern. And while she was in Africa, she met a very special gentleman, Adam, the gentleman who is now her husband and originally came from Calgary, Alberta. Adam and Tracy are parents to their daughter, McKenna, and Tracy, is passionate about networking, and she loves to connect people to resources or to each other and to help further them along as they pursue life on mission. Tracy, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
Looking forward to our discussion as we talk about caring for mission workers today. But just to introduce you to our audience quickly, tell us a bit about your own missions journey and especially, please, about your experience in caring for mission workers.
Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, I served in Africa for about 10 years, and it was really such a rich, rich time. I often say that Africa taught me so much. But 9 years ago, I sensed it was time for me to transition. And so I was looking for what would be next. And I had met some people from Crossroads Church, which is where I am now, in the place that I was serving in Dadaab, Kenya. And I started pursuing different opportunities as my future husband. So Adam and I started deepening our relationship. We were trying to find a place where we could serve together in the same place. Mm-hmm. And so his home area was definitely a possibility. So the one church that I knew in all of Alberta was Crossroads. Little did I know that when I sent an email their way that their missions pastor had just stepped down. And obviously God knew. And so this position was available, and it opened up so many possibilities in terms of what it would look like for me to be able to switch gears and go to the other side of the table and actually serve missionaries and care for them. And so the more that I heard about how intentional Crossroads was with caring for their missionaries, the more I wanted to be a part of this team. And so it's such an honor now to sit in this role where I've inherited what's already been an amazing program, and I just get to build on it and make it even better.
Well, I'm looking forward to this discussion, and we are today going to look at 7 different ideas that Tracy has outlined for us, and they really fall into 2 kind of primary categories: caring for mission workers who are on the field or in their context of service, and while they are, the other category being while they are on home assignment or home service or furlough, depending on what your church might call that phase. And so because there are 7, it works out just about right. We've got a few for the on-field care, a few for the home side care or the home assignment, and then we got one right in the middle, Tracy, that will kind of bridge those 2. So we've got 7 ahead. What's the first practical way that churches can care for mission workers? Let's start with who are already on the field. They are on the field. Yeah. What's the first way?
I think one of the most practical ways, I just remember when I was in the field, how special it was to receive mail. And it's just a simple thing, but it really is powerful. And so I knew at that point when I received those packages or letters that I was remembered and I was cared for by someone back home. And so something we do here at Crossroads is we send care packages out 3 or 4 times a year. And we also try to send out birthday cards to each of the family members. And so the kids, the adults, they all get a handwritten, signed by everybody that we can get our hands on here. And we send it off. And it's been so special because people always respond back in terms of how important it is for them to receive those tangible forms of love.
Well, it's simple, right? Who doesn't love a care package?
Right?
You feel special. It's love, right? Yeah. So I just wondered, do you have particular advice about this? We get the idea. What things have you found have really been an encouragement?
Yeah, I just think it's important just to go for it. I've got a few things here I want to share. One is just that over the years, we've taken time to actually ask our people, what are some of the things they like? And so some of their preferences. So are you a tea or coffee kind of person? Mm-hmm. What's a favorite color? What kind of chocolate do you like? Or do you like something else? Maybe sour candies. Do you prefer paper or digital when it comes to books? And so we try to personalize what we send them, which I think makes a big difference. We often try to make sure that we have a balance of fun things and also practical things. So on the practical side, some examples would be spiritual formation tools like books or devotionals, maybe a journal. We've often put sermon recordings on a flash drive and place that in there. And we always add a letter in that gives an update of what's happening in our church, our community, which is their home. And so just giving them an update and making them feel more connected to what's happening here. On the fun side, we love to use those questions that we've asked, and we always throw in some snacks. There's always some delicious chocolate or whatever it is that they really like. Often we'll grab things from local shops, and we've added in things like fishing lures for the guys. I have to admit it's harder to find these things for the guys, and so we try to be creative there. Mugs, bookmarks, coloring books, scarves, things like that. So you kind of get the idea. I think the other advice I would give really is just to be wise in terms of stewardship, but somehow find that balance to also be generous. And so something we've learned through the years, we a couple years ago thought, man, we're spending a lot on shipping books. They're expensive. They're heavy. Plus they end up having all these books, which are really heavy. They probably won't be able to pack them all home. And so we bought everybody a Kindle. And then we just send them credit to load books onto their machine. We'll make recommendations if we're going through a sermon series. We'll make sure we share that information for them. But it really brings down the shipping costs. We've also found that using some of those foreign shipping companies like the Book Depository in the UK, or even for a period, we had quite a few people in the Europe area. And so we used Amazon in Germany, and services like that really helps. And I think the last thing, just briefly, I would say in terms of being generous is that we've made a point to be intentional and put a budget line in our annual budget that's for packages and postage, because we really believe this is a priority.
I love that it's so tangible in that sense, and even you can imagine a church reviewing the annual budget, as many do, in some form and seeing it as a budget line there, I just think it lifts it so brightly, and the intentionality, right?
Yeah.
You mean to do it. When it's budgeted for, it's likely to happen. I really liked your idea about the personalization too. And just to piggyback on an idea, I'm in the process of writing letters to gentlemen who are serving as missionaries, and I'm trying to handwrite them. Guys out there, if you're serving on a missions committee, you might be a pastor, or you just know a gentleman who's serving in missions, to receive a letter from a brother.
Yeah.
I received this when I was overseas. It meant a lot when someone took time, in that case, to take out a sheet of paper and send it. If you can't send it physically because of security, there are other ways. And actually, at times, I have taken photographs. This sounds a little silly, maybe, Tracy, but I've actually taken photographs of my handwritten letter and then sent the photograph. So I still have to send it electronically, but it's a handwritten letter. People feel that they are valued highly when it's specialized to them, when it's made specifically for them. So love those ideas. So number one is care packages or mail to the field. We could talk a lot about these things. We got to move on. What is the second idea you have? How can we bless mission workers on the field?
Yeah, this one, I think it's a little bit different, but I just go with me here. So during COVID, we all had to pivot, right, in many ways. And one of the things we started doing that we could have been doing long ago was using Zoom and social media for mission update videos. And so this has been a great tool for us to stay connected with our missionaries, of course, but doing specific interviews and videos. What I'll do is I'll interview the missionary and ask them questions that we've set up ahead of time, much like we've done here. And then before we post it, I'll add in a short introduction and end with some prayer requests. And then we put that up on our webpage or social media.
It's really good. It's, we do so much of that generally now, and to do it again intentionally that way. I wonder, do you have particular examples that you would mention how this has worked or, unfolded?
Yeah, it's been, again, like I said, it's been a huge win during COVID, and I think we'll continue doing it much, much later. It provides that connection really with our missionaries. Like I said, that other touch point, especially in this season when it's been so hard for people to travel. And so we haven't been able to have people here as much as we would like, and we can't go there as much as we would like. So I love that even though we've not been able to physically be together, as I walk through the foyer of our church, people often come up to me and say, "Oh, I saw this video and I just loved hearing what they're about. I loved learning about their story, what their ministry is going through right now in this particular season." They just feel much more connected to what's happening. And so this raises the missionary's profile. It gives them a voice. And it's a current voice. It's something that's in real time in many ways. And this is also, we use it as a gift, basically. So the supporters that they have from other churches can also access this through a link. And so it's great for the missionaries to be able to share it. One other small thing I would just share is that something a little bit different. It's not so much about a video as much as the social media and just the technology is we've set up a number of live events with Facebook or Zoom and just inviting people to come and join in and have a live discussion with the missionaries. And so they give a bit of an update and then they're able to interact in that real time, which is so impactful, I think.
Great ideas. And we're better at it now. If I can say thanks to COVID, the use of these tools, I think we can expand how we're using it with some of that intentionality. So some great ideas here. If you're serving in a church, it doesn't need to be too fancy, right? Like we don't need major production here. It can be quite simple. And thanks for sharing it too. That idea of multiplying it and making it available or a link available to your mission workers so that they could bless other supporting churches or others in their supporting constituency too. It's really good. Okay. So, what's a third way now that you can suggest we care for our mission workers?
Yeah, here we have a missions committee, which I think many people are part of mission committees. And one of the things that we ask them to do is consistent check-ins with our missionaries. And so each one of our missionaries is actually connected to or attached purposefully to one of our committee members. And our team is asked to engage at least quarterly via phone or email or Zoom, whatever really is preferred by the missionary.
And I like that it's personal. You're not just sending a note, then you're not just getting an email off, and they can be very helpful and encouraging. Emails, I don't mean to say that's not an encouragement, but you're talking about something that's like voice on voice or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Obviously these days with Zoom, it's so great because we can see each other. They can show us around their house. They can show us what it looks like outside. We can do the same if we're in the middle of winter and they're in a warm climate and they miss the snow. So it personalizes it, which is great.
Yeah, that's good. What are some of the things that you try and include in those check-ins?
Yeah, I think we really desire to create a space for personal, but as well the professional topics. And so we try to hit both of those because they're really important, both sides. And we know that they both impact the success of the missionary. And so we want to hear about those standard things. Of course, we need to know, what's your ministry update? How's your support doing? Do you have any plans for home assignment or upcoming changes? But we also really try in a way that maybe it starts out a little bit less deep and it gets deeper over time, but really digging into personal stuff in terms of their marriage and their family and how is their walk with God? How is their current energy level? What's it look like in terms of investing in their local church or community?
Well, those are really important questions, but the last few that you covered there, they also evidence a level of familiarity and trust, right?
Yeah.
And so here's where the regularity of it, if this is once every 3 years that they get a phone call, it's not going to be the same we don't have the same permission, I think, to go to some of those very specific personal places. Whereas when there's a genuine friendship and trust built, then we have permission, I think, more naturally to go to some of those places. I wonder, these check-ins, do you have, cautions for us to consider as we think about these things?
Absolutely. Obviously, this is a big topic and it's something that we're trying to learn more about. We have so much to learn. But some of the things we talk about, we try to really practice going first. And so ourselves first, being vulnerable as we share our own struggles or fears or challenges that we're facing, just to kind of set the stage and say it's okay to not have everything together and to be perfect. And so that, I think, really creates a space to be more safe for them to share with us. And again, it takes time. We know that trust and safety is huge, and confidentiality, therefore, is really critical. And so we're learning more as a team what it looks like in terms of what things can be shared where. But we just need to make sure somebody knows and that we're careful with it. And so we realize, that this relationship, it's not a sprint. It's just, it's a marathon. We want to be in the long haul with these people that we care for, and building trust takes time. I have other things here, but
if you've got them right there, go for it.
I think one thing that we're really trying to be careful of is, and I think, again, it takes that time, is separating these check-ins from any kind of financial support. When we do these check-ins, even though we're on the committee and the committee provides money, it's finances, but we're not checking in to judge you or assess your performance. We do want to know how you're doing. We want it to be authentic and real, but we are on your side. We're on your team, and we want to do whatever we can, whatever is within our means to help you succeed, is the message we want them to hear. And it takes time, but we really want to love on them and help them understand that.
I think this is, having been a mission worker myself, this is really important. If the only time a church contacts a missionary is when to evaluate and talk about money, it characterizes the conversation. And it becomes a concern even for some mission workers to say, well, if I say the wrong thing, are they going to lower my support or take it away? We are in favor of evaluation. We really believe that's a healthy thing to do. But when you're caring for someone, that's different than evaluation, and it's different than remuneration phase. Yeah. Well spoken, Tracy.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to mention another episode of the podcast here. A while back, we did a great episode with Melissa Weissenberger from South America Mission. And the topic of that, it's episode 103. her topic was creating care groups for mission workers.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is congruent with what Tracy's been talking about too. In this case, Melissa talked about how to have life groups or care groups share in this and creating some direct connections. And so if you're looking for another episode along these lines and this topic, then you may want to check out episode 103, creating care groups for mission workers. Tracy, I know you have a list of resources and tools for missions committees to encourage and to empower workers. Why don't we tuck that in here? What are some of the tools that are right at the top of your list for, kind of generally for committees that want to bless people while they're on the field?
Yeah, these are just some of the things that we've found. And I think part of it is who we're working with. We have some incredible people on our committee, which has given us some great tools. But I think a lot of these are very, very practical and doable for anybody. One is just we really believe that we want to be able to empower and encourage missionaries, and not only, like I said, in their ministry, but also in their life, whether it be with their family or in their community, wherever they're placed. And so we've used personality inventories. Mm-hmm. So people are familiar with Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. Those kinds are more traditional. We've got some that we use quite often, colors and seasons. You may or may not be familiar with, but they're not hard to find. In one of our cases, we went through the seasons inventory with a group of people at one of our retreats, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the wife of this couple, after she did this, she finally had words to express what she was going through. It was really powerful. She had this amazing moment where she was finally able to see and recognize that her and her husband were in completely different seasons emotionally. And so it was a major turning point for them, and they were able to connect in a way they hadn't been able to in quite a while. So we've just found that these tools can be really effective in supporting the missionaries.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a great idea.
The other things I would just say, there's times where people need professional counseling, or they would really benefit from having a spiritual director. These are things that we've also used to try to spur on our missionaries, just seeing, again, where are those areas that we might be able to add value to what they're already doing? How can we strengthen their physical or mental or emotional or spiritual? How can we help them in any particular way? It might even be just directing them to an online or in-person retreat in their area. One other thing we've done, which has been really fun, and I think it's been really cool to be able to do this. And I know it's not always practical for everyone, but we have set aside a little bit of budget to be able to provide grants to our missionaries. And so if they have something going on within their ministry that they would love to do, but maybe it's just out of reach for them, it's not part of their normal budget, we've been able to provide grants. And so one example would be missionaries that serve in Ghana wanted to produce children's materials in the local language. They didn't exist. And they really wanted to do this for the kids in their area. And so we were able to actually fund that project so that they have now books in their local language that the kids can use to read the Bible in their language and in a way that kids really understand. So it's been really fun to be a part of things like that.
Some really practical ideas here. Gets the creative juices flowing, and just appreciate the examples that Crossroads has put forward here. Way to go, Tracy, for developing these things and keeping it. I know it's a growing thing, right? Mm-hmm. Learning and changing.
Absolutely.
Well, in just a moment, we're going to ask Tracy to share some more advice for churches in helping to care for mission workers, including some ideas for when they are on home assignment or furlough, and that crossover piece we talked about. Just before we get to that part of our conversation, we'd like to share with you this resource that we hope will be helpful to you and your church.
Are you looking for a way for your church to become more effective in global missions? CatalystServices.org is a fantastic place for churches to find excellent resources, ideas, and training opportunities. By subscribing to Postings, a monthly newsletter, you can receive practical advice and tools to help your church engage in global missions. You can also listen to a conversation with Ellen Livingood, the founder of Catalyst Services, right here on the podcast. Check out episode 106, called Engaging Your Church's Untapped Missions Potential. And now, back to today's conversation.
We are back with Tracy Minke, the pastor of outreach missions at Crossroads Church in Red Deer. We've discussed so far 3 ways that churches can help care for mission workers while they are on the field. We talked about care packages and mail, creating videos to communicate, and consistent check-ins with the missions committee. Now, Tracy, we want to get to this kind of crossover idea. So what I mean by that is this doesn't necessarily apply only to workers who are on the field or only workers who are on home assignment, but might be on either. What's the fourth idea?
Absolutely. This is probably the most fun that we get to have is every few years we invest deeply in a retreat.
Okay. Now, when you say invest deeply, that stirs our curiosity. What do you mean?
Yeah. So we put as much as we can in that budget year aside for this. And we've done two different ways. We've done regional retreats in the past where we bring people, for example, I mentioned we had quite a few people in the Europe and around that area. And so we'd bring all of them together and do a retreat. More recently, we actually brought everyone to Canada. So just before COVID, praise the Lord, we were able to bring everyone, just about everybody made it, into central Alberta, and we did a retreat all together. Wow. And these look very different for sure. For the regional one, we actually send a small team to where the missionaries are. And so you can imagine we've got our lead pastor who loves to play in this arena. He loves to come and just teach and build relationship, which is such a gift for us. And so he comes, we have a small worship team. Usually we grab a couple. So a husband and wife team, and then myself and my assistant. And then we have a couple from the missions committee. And we go with very full suitcases and we spend a week just building relationship with them and just blessing them as much as we can. They receive teaching and worship in their mother tongue and time to network and play and rest. But the one that we did here in Alberta just before COVID looked a little different because we brought everybody here. What was so cool about that is they were able to really participate in our community here. And so we had all the missionaries here for a Sunday, and they got to serve communion to us. They got to participate in the service. And then we had a big lunch afterwards, which we couldn't do right now, but I'm so grateful we could do it before COVID came. And then we took everybody in vehicles and sent them to a retreat center in the mountains where we had just kind of prepared the table for them. And we spent those days just providing, well, I'm not going to get into it, but just, it was a sweet, sweet time. And what I loved is that our own congregation could really invest in ways that they couldn't in the other cases, because now they could provide lots of baking, for example. We had some people who love giving massages or doing nails. They could do that there for them. They could even host the missionaries when they were in Red Deer in their own homes. So really, really practical, tangible ways to connect them.
Tracy, tell us just a little more, please, about what the retreat includes for your workers.
Yeah, we work hard at really setting the schedule in kind of a 50-50 way. So half of our time is spent in those corporate times together. So listening to the teaching from our lead pastor, doing worship together, even going through some workshops. And even we do a final communion service together. But the other half, which I think is so important, is the time to play. It's that time that, again, it's just things that bring joy. We've had field trips, depending on where we are. We do things like ropes course. We've had just set up especially in the mountains, lots of our stuff was inside. So like a puzzle table and an art corner. We even one time did a traditional square dance. So we brought in a caller who gave us lessons, and then we did a square dance. And the memories from that, just such a kick, so much fun. We always do a date night as well. But I think one of the things that we never want to lose is that we give people that permission to rest. And so if they just want to go into their room and nap for half the day, if they don't want to show up for one of the activities, they have permission to just do that, because this is their time and we want them to be fed, and they need to guide kind of what that looks like. And we just, again, we set the table, we give them options.
Wow. Super ideas. We'll include some of these ideas in the show notes. For those of you that listen regularly, you know that we take show notes. In case you're new, you can visit the website, globalmissionspodcast.com, and the page for this episode will include the show notes, a full list of all the resources that Tracy has mentioned, and a few others that maybe didn't make it right into our conversation today because of the time limitations that we have. So we invite you to check that out. That's the crossover category, the idea of holding retreats. Now, when we look at folks who are on home assignment, they're back in their passport country for a while. Tracy, what are some of the ways that we can care for our mission workers on home assignment?
Yeah, we just really believe that when they are in our midst, we have such an opportunity to bless them and to try to care for them as best we can while they're here. And so again, there's different sides to this. One, of course, is taking care of those basic needs. So helping them find a car, a phone, a place to stay, those basic things that need to be there. We've got a family that just arrived back from Kenya, and it's just been so cool because they actually have a care team, which you've mentioned in a previous conversation.
Right. Yep.
So their care team, it's just been fun to watch them jump into action. They provided this great welcome basket and stocked the place with meals, provided a car, and they're doing so many other fun things. But once those practical things are taken care of, we really try to find some ways to pamper them and give them opportunities to have some fun and be cared for. So we love offering date nights. This is something we do in our retreats as well. We always make sure there's date nights available. So we'll do that when they're here. We'll give them gift certificates for restaurants as well as for movies. We recently, just a couple months ago, had a couple that was back from Papua New Guinea. And I think because they had been in a rural context, and especially during this COVID season, they were just craving, I think, bright lights in big cities. So they asked if they could go and spend some nights in Edmonton. We were offering a retreat center and they were like, actually, how about Edmonton? And we were like, okay. So we found a hotel right downtown in the middle of it all. And they just relished, I think, being in the city. And so I think things like that are really good. I think on the more, I guess for us, more traditionally, we would send them to a retreat center if that's something that would suit them. We've got a couple right now that's in transition, and they're in between roles, and they've still got a few more years left that they want to do well. And so we want to help them in that time. And so we've booked them into a retreat center for a few days. We'll be meeting with them ahead of time to give them some questions and things to consider while they're there. And then on the other end, we'll meet with them and kind of debrief a bit what they've heard from the Lord, from each other, and kind of help set up some next steps. And so there's some great things that we can do there.
Wow. Super, super idea. And personalized care. You're listening to the people and honoring them, and love the individual, not just about individuality, but just the idea of personally caring for people. So some very tangible blessings. We'll call that tangible blessings. What's the sixth way you've got on your list?
Yeah, I think this one is pretty common, but I just want to make sure it's not missed. It's just this idea of organizing events for our missionaries when they're back in town. I think that's a key thing.
What type of events do you have in mind here? Just dig a little deeper for us.
Yeah, so I think the idea of organizing and facilitating events, we have this great building, and so we can again set the table for them and provide meals and food and snacks, whatever it might be for an event. So as they just invite their supporters and bring them in, we can provide an event where they can network, they can give updates to their support base, but also involve maybe bringing in new possible supporters. We love to do like dessert nights or a lunch and learn, which we'll be doing next month with one of our couples. Really even inviting people into our small groups where they can connect with individual small groups, or even being part of a Sunday service and just having that chance to really share what's going on and help our people get more engaged with missions.
This is something we didn't talk about before, Tracy, but would you just speak to the Sunday morning just for a moment? What does that sometimes look like in your particular context on a Sunday morning for a worker on home service?
Yeah, I think depending on who they are, some would be the kind that we would say, we would love if you could do a sermon, if you could actually be our speaker. But often what we want to do is really have a chance to do a bit of an interview, give people a chance to understand who they are. It's kind of what I would do in my videos now, but we do it on stage.
Right.
And then we actually would do basically a commissioning service for them and just have everybody. It's very powerful to have them up on the stage and have this church, everyone stands up and raises their hands towards them. And we just pray for them and bless them in their next term.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our list, Tracy. This is number 7 of 7. What is the last way you'll share that churches can care for their mission workers?
Mm-hmm. I think this one, it's less about what you do, but it's more about the message and the posture. And I learned this from my own time as I was serving as a missionary. I know from my own experience how exhausting it can be to be on furlough, coming home for home assignment and just nonstop doing appointments and events.
Right.
I always felt that pressure to see as many people as I could. If I saw a day in my calendar and there was no meetings, I almost felt like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I learned over the years and was taught over the years, and now I try to share this with others, that I really encourage you, before you even get here, just to block off 2 weeks of your calendar if you can afford it. Like, I really think it's worth it. Just block 2 weeks off. And if anybody asks, you're busy. You are not available. It is blocked and protected. And that is a time to go and either rest or play or just take a holiday and enjoy this part of the world again. It's just so important. And I think people struggle to do this. I think there's a lot of guilt that we kind of carry. And I just think that giving them permission to go and gain that rejuvenation is so important while they're home.
This is so good. It was in another podcast I was listening to earlier this week, totally unrelated to missions, but just identifying that we are so busy here in the West in particular that we almost shame rest.
Yeah.
And we say, well, why aren't you busy? Because everybody's busy. We're so busy.
Yeah.
And I love the expression you used, here is permission. And I'll tuck this into, as an agency, we're requiring this. And I guess I'm saying this graciously to you as a church leader as well. As an agency, we are blocking time for our workers to be rejuvenating and to be resting, and we won't have them reporting to churches during that season. And if someone is disappointed with that, we take the credit for that decision, if I could say it that way. If somebody wants to be disappointed, you could be disappointed with our organization, not with the mission family.
Yeah. Because
we were the ones that helped set the boundaries. And thank you for honoring your workers that way. And thanks to all of you listening too. Your workers go hard, and home service is not a time necessarily of rest, because there's so many reports to do, and they're all good and we love doing it. But we do need space for, and whether this is a single person, a single lady, a single gentleman, or a couple, or with kids, it's going to look different, and we can really bless them by providing this. So just a shout of agreement with your idea there, Tracy. Well, we have a bunch of episodes that have to do with caring for missionaries. I am just going to mention Matthew Phillips. We did a double episode on how churches can build healthy relationships with mission workers. It's 93 and 94. It's so congruent with what Tracy has shared here. In just a minute, I want to ask you my last question on content. But before that, if our listeners would like to follow up with you, contact you with some questions or ideas, how could they do that?
Absolutely. I think email is the best way. We have terrible reception in my office, so my phone is not a good way to contact me. So email at tracym@crossroadschurch.ca.
Very good. Thank you. Well, here's my last question, and it really would be imagining you speaking to some of your peers, Tracy. If you could imagine yourself in front of a group of pastors and missions committee members who really do want to do a great job of caring for their mission workers wherever they're serving in the world, what would you like to say to them?
I would say it is well worth every penny to be part of Missio Nexus. I think the resources that are available there is just phenomenal. For those that are in Canada, the MORE Network is another great space to go and investigate. They've got some great links and retreats and just great resources available for caring for missionaries. Another one is Global Trellis, which is just fabulous for offering online retreats and resources and so much more to those who are in the field. In terms of books, there's two I would mention. One is the Global Member Care by Kelly O'Donnell, and the other is from Barnabas International. It's called Tender Care.
Well, just a complete list of resources. Tracy, this has been great, practical, inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Global Missions Podcast.
Thank you so much, Megs. It's been great.
Well, thanks for joining us today. This episode was brought to you by the Global Missions Toolbox, an online collection of resources for pastors, missions committees, and families and friends of mission workers. There you can find show notes, other episodes, and an increasing number of downloads available to help us with missionary care, like our topic today, and other important elements of a healthy, missions-minded church. We invite you to stop by and check out those resources at globalmissionstoolbox.com. Thanks for listening today. Please leave us a review and subscribe on your favorite app. This helps lift the program into view for others. We pray that you'll be encouraged as you walk with the Lord today, and we invite you to join us again in 2 weeks when we'll continue to explore this grand adventure of being Christ's witnesses to the ends of the earth.